Let us honor Vance Martin, please. So why should we gather? Everybody knows their fossil fuel footprint was made criminal by this gathering. I jet set all over the world. I'm a fossil fuel criminal in that regard. So why do I do this when I can stand in front of you and say, I care very deeply about climate change? I'll tell you why. Because we are a social species. For all the things that exist that enable us to see so many things electronically, there is nothing like being in a room full of your own species. And this room is full of our own species of every shape, color, size, and age. And when I had the privilege of opening this event on your behalf with the President of Mexico on Friday night, I said, we hope that the magic of Mexico will allow us to have 7 days that change the world for the better. I can tell you that as an organizing group, we had ambitions for outcomes at this event. And in every single case, we got one notch above what we were hoping for, and we got some things we weren't hoping for. That wasn't us. That was all of us. It was the magic that happens when people of goodwill assemble in one place with shared goals and dreams and courage. Who gathered was 1,500 people from 51 countries who gathered physically. And then we developed a web following through the social platforms that our team built. 3,500 people from 70 countries followed the proceedings on the web. And not just click, oh, I see a picture, goodbye. These were long web visits, as I'm told web statistics work. So we did have a global gathering that you all felt and we're all part of. I've been to many events where the words are, you need to include young people, you need to include young people. We did include young people. But the young people had their own program because that's age and stage appropriate. And we did include young professionals. And they're more integrated in the central program for obvious reasons because they're adults. And we had elders at this event. Our wisest and most respected were here with us. And we engaged the wilderness within through the arts, through culture, through song, through photography, through writing. And we had the first ever conservation event with a special evening of body painting. And we had the first ever bilingual World Wilderness Congress. The President of Mexico, when he opened the event, asked for my remarks ahead of time so that they could see, his staff wanted to know what I was going to say. But we didn't get to know what he was going to say ahead of time, which is entirely appropriate, nor did we know what the governor of Yucatan was going to say. But what the governor of Yucatan stood up to say was, we are going to materially increase the protected areas of the Yucatan, and we are going to protect coastal mangroves. We didn't know we were going to get that at this event. We didn't know that the President of Mexico would make the kind of commitment to mangroves that Ezekiel repeated. What we did hope for And what we got in spades was that we could give birth to a new word. A new word that means wilderness in Spanish. And by the end of the opening evening, Friday night, the word tierras silvestres had entered the vocabulary of Spanish. It was not a word that had a positive or real meaning before Friday night. You were here when birth was given to a new powerful concept. The President of Mexico repeated it multiple times. The Governor of the Yucatan repeated it multiple times. And a postage stamp series was issued on behalf of the Mexican Postal Service with Tierras Silvestres written right on it. This matters because there are some critics of wilderness who say it's a gringo concept. Or it's even worse, it's an American concept. No, it's a human concept. It's how we understand that part of the world that isn't about us. It's about us in the world. And now we can say it in Spanish. We had a remarkable thing happen, the Memorandum of Understanding, which was negotiated between the heads of agencies in North America, Canada's Park Service, 5 agencies in the United States, the Mexican Park Service. That's complicated. That's a public service level document and it really matters. But you know the only thing the President of Mexico asked me to take out of my talk? Please take out the reference to that Memorandum of Understanding because the President wants to announce it himself. And then the Minister of the Environment of Canada stood up on stage and talked about it. So if you know how public policy works, you move from an agency agreement to 2 of the most powerful people in our continent talking about it, and suddenly this thing has wings. It was all over the media in Canada. We did not expect that. We really liked it, but we did not expect it. We had a corporate commitment to wilderness that was made. Some global brands, national brands were on the stage saying we need to get behind wilderness with a process going forward. It's very special. We had marine wilderness talked about seriously. Now you might say, well, of course, land and sea. I can tell you that in the 1990s, I had to listen to so many people say, you cannot apply concepts relevant on land matters to terrestrial environments because they're very complicated. We didn't hear any of that crap this week. People just said, this is what we got to do. This is a major advance. I know it sounds remarkable, but our ability to overcomplicate our work is unlimited. Unlimited. And we've made change. And then comes the message from Merida, or the Mensaje de Merida, document that our colleague Cyril pulled together. This is an amazing thing I want to share with you. A year ago, some of us, Brendan was among us, in Barcelona at the World Conservation Congress, we were deeply frustrated. There was a special meeting of senior people to talk about nature and the climate. And we sat there in this special meeting in Barcelona with senior people from the climate convention side, and they said, we should not confuse nature conservation with climate change or these 2 treaties because obviously they're very different things with very different mechanisms. And I said, man, this is nuts. This is nuts. These things had gotten so complicated that people had forgotten what they were trying to do. So a few of us set out to try to change that. Well, I have never been part of a bonfire like this. It's exceptional what happened. Brendan and I consulted a bunch of people. We got out and dinner in Barcelona one night and get this message to Merida, this idea of bringing the conventions back together. Then we ultimately wrote an article. And then our friends and Cyril worked all over the world talking up this idea. The World Commission on Protected Areas got involved. We issued that message from Merida, which is a 4-page document. It passed through many policy wonks, many lawyers, like me, training, in no time at all. It was time. it was time in this part of the human journey that we just say in simple terms, we need to save the climate and we need to save nature in order to do it. In a simple phrase, that's what we said in that message. It was signed on to in your presence by half of the largest conservation groups on planet Earth. And several hundred of you have signed your name since then. And people are clamoring from all over to get involved now through the web process. And we will send a message to the Copenhagen process that it is time to think about the Earth as a whole. You did that here. The magic of this gathering did that as much as any technical work. And I think it is really going to make a difference. And then we heard, for the first time anybody's heard publicly, about a plan to save 50,000 hectares of grizzly bear and wolf-full wilderness in the Carpathian Mountains in Europe. Really tangible things in a place I bet most of us didn't know was full of those kinds of things. So we have gathered, nos hemos reunido, we have felt, hemos sentido, we have thought, hemos pensado, now we must act. Ahora necesitamos actuar. But the youth asked us, before leaving the room, how? That was the question they left. How? Well, we've been thinking about it, and we think we know how. And I'm about to share with you what we think is necessary to do. Grounded on the science, grounded on the state of things in our world, we believe that it is time to advance a global vision that we will protect in an interconnected manner at least half of the surface of the Earth on land and on sea. At least half of this Earth should be left so that we can have functions like life continue with us, so we can regulate the climate, so that we put a vision out there in front of humanity that says we have to stop bleeding and we can start dreaming and start building a coherent view of what the 21st century ought to look like. And at the heart of that must be wild nature. And you know what? That's what the science says. That's what the science says. It's time we got rid of phony targets. A best judgment in 1982 was we should do 12%, and the man who had that best judgment is sitting there. Canton, wave your hand. That, in the condition the world was in there, was the best thing we knew what we could do. But the world has deteriorated horribly since 1982. And now, the science is, by land and sea, that if we don't protect at least half of it in an interconnected manner, the thing is going to unravel. Now that's scary because it's not consistent with goals that we've sold to people before. It doesn't matter. We need to speak the truth. The same thing happens on the climate side. We put in the message that we need 350 parts per million, but the negotiators want 450, or maybe more now. Why did they pick 450? Because it was something we felt like we could do. Well, the science is 350 is the maximum for coral reefs. 370 where we are now, they are dying. There will be none left on the face of planet Earth if we go to 450. Is it acceptable that we pass a death sentence on coral reefs consciously because we're afraid to speak the truth? I believe, and I think all of you believe, there is great power in speaking simple truths. And we believe at the Wild Foundation that it is time we spoke simple truths. It is time to say that we should protect at least half of this planet by land and sea. And interestingly, one of the first people I heard that from was an Aboriginal leader. And I think I can speak for Aboriginal people, some of whom are here anyway, who would say, well, of course you want to look after this thing on a large scale. Why would you chop it up into little pieces? But we've defended and apologized for too long. It's time for us to move it out. How would you do this? Not with top-down only, but with top-down certainly. Wilderness areas, national reserves. Tribal lands. There was a whole Tribal Lands and Wilderness Council. Corporate lands. Private lands in the hands of individuals. Municipal watersheds. But it must aggregate to that scale or we won't do the job. But it isn't about any one agency or any one person doing it. It needs to be a global social movement. We hope that that will be kicked off now. You will be hearing a lot more about that, but it isn't us only who are going to do it. We are just going to incubate it just like we incubated this gathering. It is intended to be a shared idea across society and across the world. So this is where we want to go. And as we invited you here, we invite you to come on this journey with us. We started this journey in Canada, where the conservation community adopted this idea of protecting at least half. You know what happened? The province of Ontario has decided it wants to protect at least half of northern Ontario, 225,000 square kilometers. The province of Quebec has decided it wants to protect at least half of northern Quebec, 500,000 square kilometers. We couldn't get Quebec to move from 0 to 12%, but we could get it to go from 6% to 50%, no problem. Why? Because it's a clean idea, people understand it, and they can say yes or no. If they don't like it, let them give their reasons. But I remember watching this room when that young person said, "Would everybody who believes we're sustainably managing the earth please rise?" How many of you stood up? None of us, because we all know it's not working. And if the best science says we should protect at least half, then that's what we ought to do. So that will be the forward agenda we hope for the wilderness movement in the 21st century. And now I'd like to invite Toshka to come up and close as we open. Toshka, where are you? Toshka, come, please.
It was amazing days here. And I would like to sing this prayer. Is interesting because it's a jaguar prayer, the spirit of jaguar. And my dad used to sing when he's want to help somebody, ask for the spirit guidance. And I would like sing this song to close this event, asking for the great spirit to guide us back to our home, to connect us with the nature and give us a hope for the future and for our planet and for our people. I want to hope, you know. Ono vai queria Ono vai queria vai vou ganai Katsi katsi kurani Katsi katsi kurani Kuma kuma kurani Mari Mari Kurani Mari Mari Kurani Kere 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 Ya Kere 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 Ya Amia Sainu Naniti Yeshua Yawanawa Evovo Nananari Ikia Nananawa Evovo Nukari Ikia Saite Inawa ya